Another player that didn't feature yesterday was Ivan Toney. There could be big developments on his future over the coming. For the very latest, let's get to the club's training ground right now and join Paul Gilmore. Hello, Paul. This potentially could be one of the biggest transfers of the window. Bring us up to speed.
Well, good morning, Matt. Yes, Ivan Toney's omission from the Brentford squad to face Crystal Palace yesterday was transfer related, as told by Brentford boss Thomas Frank yesterday. It's a development, really. It emerges after news of a failed bid from Saudi Arabia, Al Ahly, the club involved making a bid to Brentford, but clearly nowhere near their valuation, so that was rejected. And since Ivan Toney made it clear that he did want a new challenge away from Brentford as his contract was running out, he's got 1 year left on that contract. There has been a lot of interest in him, but crucially, no one has yet been able to submit a bid that meets Brentford's needs, and therefore Ivan Toney remains a player. That said, time is running out to strike a deal, and obviously in this transfer window, and when a player generally is left out of a match-day squad, it's always a sign that maybe something could just be beginning to move, and that's maybe the case with Ivan Toney now as the interest ramps up and it gets to the serious stage of the transfer window.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. It is usually a sign, isn't it, when a player is left out, that something is close, that they're on the way. But in the past, Brentford have been very clear. They have a price for Toney, so I presume they're going to be sticking to those principles all the way through.
Yeah, quite often what happens in a situation like this is a club will decide upon a strategy and move forward with that strategy as they try to sell a player. So the decision will have already been taken to sell Ivan Toney. The player wants to go. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean they will cave in and do it, because ultimately Brentford have a striker who can score 20 goals a season. Thomas Frank has mentioned that many times and has spoken about the fact that this guy will get you goals. He's 28 years of age. He's at kind of a peak age for a footballer. The other side of that is, for a buying club, they're looking at the age as, yes, he's in his peak at this moment in time, but there's not much sell-on value, and if you look at the transfer trends over the last few years, a lot of clubs target younger players. So that's the other side of it. But it depends on that desire, that need. Is there a club that is just willing to go closer to Brentford's valuation? Is there a negotiation somewhere to meet just shy of that? We saw that situation develop with Harry Kane. With Tottenham and Bayern Munich, with 1 year left on the contract. It's becoming more and more common for players to run down contracts, and they will have a lot of power in that sense. But as we saw with Harry Kane, there will be clubs that still want to manage to secure a striker, especially a striker who gets a lot of goals, because that is quite a key position, isn't it? It's every football manager wants goals in the team, and that's really what's happening at the moment. I think I get the feeling that there will be a deal struck. But remember, Brentford, as recently as November 2023, Thomas Frank talked about Ivan Toney being worth £100 million. That might be less realistic with 1 year to go, but equally Brentford would be quite happy to keep hold of him, get more goals out of him, and the only risk with that is they don't get anything whatsoever if he leaves on a free next summer. So it's a really delicate, sensitive stage of this transfer saga, if you like. They're doing okay without him, and have done okay without him in the games he missed because of his ban. And then yesterday against Crystal Palace, you've got the likes of Brian Mbeumo and Johan Vissa stepping up. Kevin Shada is also a player who they expect big things from here. So Ivan Toney very much the centre of this transfer saga, and will continue, I'm sure, throughout the remainder of this window.
Top man. Cheers, Paul. I'm sure you'll keep us posted should anything happen.
Dave, let's continue that chat on Ivan Toney. Just tell us, how important has he been since joining Brentford?
Yeah, no doubt about it. He scored plenty of goals, but I'm going to tell you why Brentford might just be OK without Ivan Toney. First, though, we have to take you back a little bit. He has really been the focal point of the Brentford attack. Toney scored 34.5% of Brentford's goals in 22-23, of course, only behind Harry Kane and Erling Haaland. The only problem is this wasn't last season. It's the season before last. And as Paul mentioned, Brentford have had to cope without Toney before because of his ban. So let's take a look at how they've got on over the last year with and without Ivan Toney. Remember, he returned in January for the final 17 games of the season. Brentford won more games. They scored more goals per games, conceded fewer, and they also had a higher win percentage as well. They've also collected more points per game without Ivan Toney. Thomas Frank had to shuffle things around without his main man up front and finished the season 13 points clear of the bottom three. Staying up, James, was a successful season for Brentford last year. Can they do it again? And will they do it again, but without Ivan Toney?
Well, Brentford have been preparing to lose Ivan Toney for a long period of time. In February, they confirmed the signing of Igor Thiago here, £30 million. However, he was injured in pre-season and is now out until the end of 2024. But Brentford showed yesterday and last season, as you were showing, Dave, they have enough firepower to cope. Toney missing for 20 matches last season. Johan Visser and Brian Mbeumo, both of them scoring yesterday. They carried the goal-scoring burden. Visser got 12, Mbeumo got 9, both on the score sheet against Crystal Palace. Thomas Frank also been boosted by the return to fitness of this man, Kevin Schade. He can play across the forward line. So Brentford won't panic if Toney does depart in this window. It'll be interesting to see if they enter the market potentially for a stopgap. We saw Neil Maupay last season to such great effect. He really contributed towards keeping them in the top flight, and they've got Keane Lewis-Potter as well as a potential option. So with that in mind, Flex, thinking about the options Brentford have, a really impressive start to the season against Crystal Palace. Do you think they'll be panicking? And if they were to bring somebody in, do you think they need some at this point in the window?
I think there'll be anything but panic at Brentford, and that's not to downplay Ivan Toney's contribution to Brentford, because he's been fantastic. He's given them great service and great value. But this isn't a surprise. Ivan Toney potentially moving club has been on the hot topic for quite a while now. The planning would have gone into this, and yes, his value seems to have dropped and the interest isn't quite there. But as you've just displayed there, guys, at the big screen, there's plenty of options. There's an optimism there. There's a calmness about it. And when you look at the players that they do have, especially in Wissa and in Bremer, when you look at last season with the burden that they carried, and they've started off this season literally yesterday on the front foot, scoring goals, I think Brentford fans should be encouraged by the planning and the people at Brentford who make the football decisions, and Thomas Frank. They're in good hands. Of course, Ivan Toney, or a player of that quality leaving the football club, is always going to be a dent. But to panic, I don't see that. This isn't something that's just sprung out of nowhere. He's got plenty of years left on his deal, and they need to cash in, and there's going to be a huge sum of money. And what are we going to do without him? As the stats just say, they've coped pretty well without Ivan, and that's saying something with a player of his calibre. So I think it's testament to actually the planning that's gone into this, and I don't think they should panic at all. And
just in terms of Toney and where he could go, where he should go, I mean, he's 28 years old, should be quite close to his prime. As we heard there from Paul, he was a £100 million player. In theory, not that long ago, a lot of big clubs we heard were interested in him. No offence to the Saudi League, but why would he go to Saudi at this stage of his career?
I think it's that saying about how things can change so quickly in football. I think initially there's a lot of shoulda, woulda, coulda. If the ban didn't happen and Ivan kept playing through that time and had a lorry load more of goals to contribute and was in fantastic form, maybe the interest would have been a lot higher. So lack of options is definitely something that I think would be taken into consideration. Of course, financially and the security that can give, getting a huge contract out in Saudi Arabia is a massive proposition. And, I mean, people can say about the standard out there, etc., but who's to say Ivan Toney doesn't look at it and say, I wouldn't mind playing with Riyad Mahrez, I wouldn't mind playing with Roberto Firmino. These are top players. So it is a little bit of a surprise. I understand that, but I think the lack of offers on the table from said top 6 clubs, you have to look elsewhere. And if that's a feasible option at this point, and Brentford do need some money for him as well, they would want a conclusion. I don't think they would want him to stay and run down his contract and let him go on a free. So I think that could be on the cards unless something changes in Europe or somewhere in the Premier League.
Who knows? This might reignite some Premier League interest. We don't know if that happens. We will let you know.